Hey everybody, it's John Pollock and Cody Saftik with you. Coming up this weekend, the main event in Sao Paulo, Brazil will pit a rematch involving Antonio Rogério Nogueira and Ryan Bader, who I had the opportunity to speak with earlier this week ahead of this fight because he is going into the final fight on his existing UFC deal, and he chatted with me about the rematch and his pending free agency.
Yeah, it's not changing really anything. Fighters go into each fight, they have a lot of stuff on their plate. The pressure they put on themselves. They want to perform the best they can. Want to perform for their coaches and make everybody proud. But there's no really added pressure here. The decision to fight our contract out is really just one of those things where we said, hey, why not? Just kind of betting on yourself and going out there and seeing what you're worth, and doesn't mean I want to leave the UFC at all. It's just one of those things where we're in a position where we said, hey, why don't we just fight this out? Instead of signing just a contract, just kind of the same as I had. So just one of those situations where I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just thinking about going out there, doing my job, and then afterwards we can kind of dive into that world a little bit.
So Ryan Bader is one of the more interesting fighters competing this weekend, Cody, because he is going into the final fight on his UFC deal, and I think smartly is going to work this contract out and see what the interest is for a Ryan Bader, win or lose after Saturday. And on top of that, he gets a win, especially an impressive one, over Nogueira on Saturday in Brazil. He is likely that next guy, permitting that Daniel Cormier wins. I don't think the Anthony Johnson outcome does any favors for Ryan Bader or that division for that matter. But this is an important fight with stakes to it, and that really is a testament to the light heavyweight division, and they are desperate for contenders.
I think a brilliant move on Ryan Bader's part, because a lot of hardcore fans will underappreciate a guy like Ryan Bader and think, oh, well, what's this guy's monetary value? And if you're the UFC and you're looking to re-sign him, they're not looking to throw blockbuster money at him. And if you're 33-year-old Ryan Bader now, you need to think, this is the last contract I signed, how much more am I going to fight into it? So you're coming up in the last fight in your deal. You're getting a headlining fight against Nogueira. By the way, he's already fought him 6 years ago, back when he was 27. He's gotten so much better that he beat him 30-27 last time. He's advanced so much exponentially since then. Now you get to show off all your skills. Big fight for him. I don't think it's the riskiest fight for him. Not a showcase fight because Nogueira is obviously very tough, but this is the performance that you can go out there, come off and say, listen, you have two options here, UFC. Re-sign me. They do need him for their divisions because the light heavyweight division in particular, as you mentioned, is very, very thin. But he's got a great option that if the UFC chooses not to sign him, he could very easily go to Bellator, where he holds a win over Phil Davis, the current light heavyweight champ. He's the last guy to beat Phil Davis. So that's a huge bargaining tool to say, you know what, there's going to be outside parties that are interested in me. This is the last fight of my deal. If you want to sign me, and I'd love to be here, don't get me wrong, at least make it worth my while. So this is huge for him, and this has a lot of implications both for his career and the division's picture.
Yeah, I don't think he's a guy that necessarily is, a massive signing by Bellator, but I completely believe they would have interest in him. I think that Spike has always shown an interest in those Ultimate Fighter winners that came up on that network that they can showcase. And for Ryan Bader, for any fighter, I think after you've lost a lot of your sponsors, or at least can't wear them into the octagon, you owe it to yourself as a business to at least see what is the demand for a Ryan Bader on the open market. I think a lot of fighters should do themselves a service and at least test the market. UFC will make a qualifying offer. There is always that to fall back on. I don't think the UFC walks away from Ryan Bader, period. But for Ryan Bader, it's always a risk when you go into a fight like this, because a loss, that does somewhat hurt your leverage.
It would hurt your leverage a lot, but as you mentioned, if Daniel Cormier wins in that scenario, that's huge for him, because when you look at the division, you think, okay, Alexander Gustafsson has already lost to both Johnson and Cormier, not likely to get that rematch right away. A guy like Oven St. Preux, who's ranked in the top 5, he's just been eliminated. A guy like Glover Teixeira, who has a win over Bader, he's just been eliminated. So there's not a whole lot of guys, and when you think
Jimmy Manuwa coming off one win is your backup.
Exactly, and this is another guy that's lost to Anthony Johnson in empathetic fashion. So you think back to that press conference where Ryan Bader got in Daniel Cormier's face and Daniel Cormier started yelling, "You're the easiest fight in the division." You have that little bit of heat. If Daniel Cormier is able to win and John Jones is still on the sideline, that's a great fight for Ryan Bader. But at least he has that option of, I can be a title challenger in 2 different divisions. And when you look at Phil Davis and you think that he's getting his sponsors back, he's having a great run of success right now in Bellator, he's growing his profile, and you think to yourself, you know what, I've beaten this guy. Split decision, but a great fight, well, not a great fight nonetheless, but a competitive fight nonetheless. Make it for 5. He's got options. Ryan Bader's a guy that's been around the sport for a long time. He deserves to cash out at some point, but I would like to definitely say, good job on him for fighting this contract out. Most guys would have not have done that.
Last question. Does Nogueira, what does a win do for him in that division? Because as we've said, it's a lot of parity in this division where guys hold wins over others, and we're not deep with contenders. Does a win put him anywhere near there, even at 40 years old?
I don't think so. I think at this point, not that he's a novelty, but I think he's the kind of fighter that you put on these cards in Brazil. So he has this great rematch with Shogun in Brazil, and then you give him a fight with Pat Cummins in Brazil, and now he's returning once again to Brazil. I mean, it'd be crazy to think he's a title challenger, but he's a guy with a name and a reputation, and in this day and age, you need those guys with built-in reps already to try to build in a new audience and bring in other eyeballs. So I think it's a great fight, but yes, he's 40 and a half now, and at some point you would have to think that the end of the road, his twin brother has now been officially done for quite some time, so let that sink in. This guy's probably getting near the end himself.
You have to include the and a half there just to really drive it home. It's happening on Saturday night from Sao Paulo, Brazil. A lot of implications for this light heavyweight main event rematch involving Antonio Rogério Nogueira and Ryan Bader.